Today, we break down every single combine performance from day number one of the linebackers, defensive interiors, and the edge rushers. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I live stream this whole thing. So if you guys want to experience it live, feel free to go over and check that out. It was over 4.5 hours. I even ended it a little bit early. I was tired. I was done. We freestyled for 4.5 hours and we ended up having an awesome guest, Metro Sports, pop on for a little bit there. So if you guys do like that channel as well, feel free to go over and check out our first little sneak peek into some cross collaboration work that we're going to be doing. But I'm going to be going through every single position and just going through all the drills. I know that I could have ended up doing like a winners and losers thing, and we're just going to discuss every single player and basically discuss whether we liked it or not. So let's get into this. Starting out with the defensive interiors, I'm literally going to be going down the line like this. So we'll end up looking at the performances as a whole. But starting out with our defensive tackles, the best 40 time of the day was Zane Durant. So obviously we're just going to talk about these guys in some groups here. So I think that like at the top, we have the undersized yet extremely athletic players. We have Zane Durant, Caleb Proctor, Grayson Halton. All three of these players ended up living up to exactly what we were kind of hoping for. Zane Durant was even more athletic. 4.75 is incredible. Proctor popped off at the Shrine Bowl. Halton has been, kind of a Twitter darling. So all of them extremely undersized, that 290 frame. DeMonte Capehart is the real story, though. He is like 313 pounds, and he's going 4.85, and he tested incredibly well in the other areas that we will see in a moment. So great testing there. Don't really know too much about David Gusta. If you guys have some facts, feel free to drop it in there, but never really popped off to me. There's a lot of players who, in my opinion, got snubbed from the combine that deserved it maybe a little more than he does. But Jackie Marshall, it sucks to see him, not have had the year that you wanted to, but ended up having a fantastic performance athletically. Albert Reed just overperformed as well. Obviously, we're going to be looking through all those testing numbers, but Albert Regis, a run defender who's running sub 4.9 is incredible. Caleb Banks at near 330 pounds also had a day, 5.04.40. Chris McClellan, solid defensive interior there from Missouri. We'll actually click on his card really quick to end up checking him out. So, yeah, definitely somebody that you'd want to have on your squad, 313 pounds and, great arm length. So testing out the 505 was 100% the right move. So we continue on here with Bryson Eason. One of the bigger letdowns of the day. He is a great personality. I got to have like a very short conversation with him over at the Senior Bowl, but former linebacker just did not test very well. Nick Barrett, not a huge fan either of how he tested, given the fact that he's more of a pass rush upside type of defensive interior. Brandon Cleveland was probably the biggest disappointment for me. Because maybe it's Lee Hunter, but he's a nose tackle. Brandon Cleveland was somebody who I was really hoping to be more athletically gifted. One of the more poor performers in terms of like all of what happened today. Cam Ball, not necessarily a big performer either. 5.13 on his 40. Lee Hunter, again, we're going to talk about some more scary facts, but sub 5.2. And then you got Tim Keenan with a 5.31. He is just a big nose plug. No one ever expected him to do much, but those are 40s. What we really care about are 10-yard splits. So, of course, we still have that top of the group here with Marshall, Halton, Proctor, Gusta, and Durant. Like, all 1.7 and above. That's really good. Like, that's kind of what you're looking for. Nick Barrett, even though he had a shitty 40, he ended up having still that 1.71 on the 10-yard split. So again, in terms of, defensive interiors, this is what truly matters. That's a good performance there. Still underwhelming in terms of longer capabilities, which, if you're trying to track down a quarterback, that is what's going to matter more than your 40 or more than this 10-yard split, is if you're just trying to actually track somebody down over more than a 10-yard stretch, you have to start caring about how they're going to perform at over 10 yards. DeMonte Capehart still, especially at that size, phenomenal at that 1.71. Regis as well. So we're seeing some really good short range mobility here from the top of the defensive line class. Caleb Banks at his size, 1.76, is phenomenal. Once again, underwhelming for Brandon Cleveland. Same thing for Cam Ball. Lee Hunter at the 1.79. Honestly, again, when you end up looking at it in the context of Bryson Eason, Chris McClellan, Tim Keenan, it's very, very it is more relieving to see that than someone like Bryson Eason, who, again, I thought he would have tested out way better. Chris McClellan, He's also in that 313-pound range, so still very solid. And Tim Keenan, again, no one expects him to really make much of a splash play. So let's look at the vertical. Again, this is a huge one. Grayson Halton ended up having a near all-time performance, 36.5 inches. Incredible. Regis, though. I mean, a run stuffing or defensive tackle, getting a 34-inch vert with an incredible 1-7, 10-yard split. Same thing with DeMonte Capar at 33.5. Like, these guys tested out incredibly well. Zane Durant also that 33.5. Caleb Proctor did extremely well. Like, we're just seeing this, and the big story here is Caleb Banks with a 32 vert. We ended up seeing Tyler Onyedem have a 32-inch vertical. I'm kind of surprised he didn't do any of the other drills, but is what it is. But again, kind of like there's just a common theme here, which is like some of these smaller defensive interiors, they either performed extremely well or very, very poorly. And the same thing we classify for the edge group. But again, I mean, Gary Smith ended up doing his vert. He ended up even, I think he ended up, he messed up some drills as well in the open field drills. I'm not a fan of that. Devin Eastern didn't really do much either for me, but this is the big one. Lee Hunter ended up having a 21.5-inch vertical. I knew that he was a little chunky, but you should just not do the vertical if you're not going to jump over 25. I'll just throw that out there. I don't like it if you're under 30, but under 22, very, very scary for teams that, again, we're in a very athletic league. For teams that are looking at first-round picks and you're debating between Lee Hunter and some of these other players, it could be something where it's like, man, he just doesn't have that explosiveness to him. We'll look at the broad as well for the defensive interiors. Again, Regis and then Banks leading the squad is incredible. I mean, Banks getting the same broad as Halton is amazing. Again, you got at least this one, Bryson Eason did, he tested out very well. So at least we're talking about a 9.4 vert there. DeMonte Capehart, the one area where he was kind of middle of the pack was this broad jump. And once again, Lee Hunter with Tim Keenan in terms of guys who just cannot do jack shit in terms of the athletic drills. Which again begs the question, why did you test if you aren't going to test? Well, it appears that none of them did a 3-cone drill, but there were a couple short shuttles. And again, Jackie Marshall leading the charge, and you could see there's legitimate time gaps between these. So, Caleb Proctor, Jackie Marshall showing out to be the most fluid of the group. And again, Regis is a big surprise. Again, Eason, the big disappointer right there. But, solid performance. Again, not many guys are going to be doing it, and they have not done the bench press yet. Let's look at some defensive ends. Starting out with the fastest edge, which he went with the linebackers. I don't know why they don't have him in both, but Arvell Reese ran a 4.46 official 40-yard dash. Fantastic there. Technically, a spoiler alert, both of the Ohio State guys did. David Bailey ended up running a 4.5 flat. Again, that's awesome. I mean, he was projected 4.54, ended up doing a 4.5 flat. So we're talking about the two top edge rushers being the two best athletes in a straight line. And that's not common. A lot of times you'll have like a little tiny dude who ends up like having a crazy motor and just going and going and going. But Arvell Reese as well, he's 240 pounds. You'd want to be a little bit more if he's a pure edge rusher. Again, ran with the linebackers too. David Bailey, good build. 33 3/4 inch arms is phenomenal. But here we go. Malachi Lawrence, friend of the show, friend of mine. He ended up getting a 4.52 40-yard dash, which is incredible. I know he and I talked about it. We wanted to get him maybe into the 4.4s, if not maybe even lower. But, 4.52 at a 253-pound frame is phenomenal. You got Trey Moore as well. He's a weird linebacker edge hybrid. He tested out very well for being 240 pounds and, again, being one of those hybrids who actually played majority linebacker this year. Cassius Howell was a huge loser. He ended up having a good 10-yard split, which we'll check out in a minute. But 30 1/4 inch arms, just unacceptable. I mean, literally, if he gets drafted, it is the shortest arms on a drafted player for the past 20 years. Just going to say, not good. Not good at all. And He still didn't even test necessarily that incredibly well. 4.59. It's not like he was 4.49 or like in the same tier as some of these other edge rushers that he would have needed to be for us to start truly ignoring that size or that arm length. Denied Dennis Sutton had a phenomenal day. We'll continue highlighting it, but 4.63 at about 256 pounds. Just great frame, great mobility. He looked really fluid in on-field drills as well. Jaysean Barham, I wanted him to be faster for someone who has 32-inch arms and is primarily a run defender at sub 250. Definitely something I was hoping a little bit more for. Romello Height looked garbage. You could tell he was up to 239, and it was not the weight he's used to carrying. He looked dog shit at the Senior Bowl at 238 pounds. So it's pretty clear that he's just putting on weight to, cover up a facade of him actually, being of NFL size. He should have honestly just ended up being 230 pounds and then running a 4.48 and then just having teams wonder what they could do with some extra pounds on him. Then you got George Gums. He looks solid overall. I mean, he's probably going to be a nobody in the league, higher tier run defender. You got R. Mason Thomas. That's the biggest loser outside of, to be fair, Cassius Howell ended up running nearly 0.1 seconds faster. I think the biggest loser is R. Mason Thomas. A lot of people have been riding R. Mason Thomas, including myself. I really did like R. Mason Thomas on tape, but he's 240 pounds. And yeah, maybe some injury factors in here, but running a 4.67 at 240 pounds is simply unacceptable with sub 32-inch arms. It's simply unacceptable. And I think his second run was in the 4.7s as well. It did not add up. And then we have TJ Parker. I wish he tested better, 4.68 on the 40, but again, he's just a well-rounded player. Nobody's getting him to be an athletic freak. Marvin Jones Jr., not necessarily the best timing, but, no one really thinks about that. Nadame Tucker, he's someone who's statistically a monster and a nightmare to guard, but, he has like 30 to 31-inch arms, and he's testing the 4.7s. It's just not really a reliable look unless you're kicking inside. Quintavious Hutchins, this is actually the worst. R. Mason Thomas just has the most draft stock. Hutchins is in the 230s and ran a 4.74. Really embarrassing. I just can't lie. Riger had a really good 10 split, but he ended up kind of like not having that top speed. He still looked really fluid in field drills as well. Mason Riger, the edge out of Wisconsin. Max Llewellyn, really disappointing performance. I was expecting him to be a bit faster in like the 4.7 range. He's in the 4.8s. Edge rusher out of Iowa. And, overall, it looked a bit slower. Vincent Anthony, he definitely needed to be a lot faster for me to consider him as like a legitimate player to get reps in the NFL. He definitely is not at 4.84, not really the best build in the world. LT Overton kind of confirms that he should probably be like more of a 3-4 defensive end, which sucks because at the Senior Bowl, I hoped that he was going to be a little bit more, but 4.8, 740 there. Nigel Lee Kelly, he ended up coming in at over 255 pounds. And yeah, it's very clear with someone who's listening to 240s, ends up looking like he, again, very similar to Romello Height, added weight that he shouldn't have, just to look like he added weight. And it's just like, play at the weight that you're actually going to perform the best at. Like, if you can be a 230-pound player that can zoom off the edge and actually still maintain some power, it's going to be a lot better than being 245 pounds and being somebody who doesn't have enough speed, doesn't have enough strength. Like, you're just not going to be good enough pretty much in anything. And I think that adding that weight really did hamper Nigel Lee rather than help him. Wesley Williams tested out in majority really well outside of his 40. His 4.89 is garbage. But we'll check out the 10-yard split. I think it was a little better there. And the rest of the testing, including the on-field drills, look phenomenal for him. So, hoping that maybe it's just more of a fluke with the 40. And once again, though, the 10-yard split is king. Cassius Howell leading the group, which he needed to. Again, 30.25-inch arms, the shortest in the past 20 years of all drafted edge rushers. Arvell Reese tying him there with Malachi Lawrence, once again, amazing. 159 right behind Arvell Reese and Cassius Howell. Trey Moore, also like right on their tails. Jaysean Barham, the one good thing is, even though he's a run defense edge, I think he's going to do a fantastic job because he can close in short range. And the big thing with TJ Parker is he might not be able to track you down over a long range, but he does get close and in close range. 161 on the 10-yard split is phenomenal. Talking about him on the tier of Cassius Howell here. Mason Riger as well. Like I said, he just doesn't have that top gear. Like, TJ Parker did better than David Bailey in short range. And something that was in my notes is I liked David Bailey's explosiveness. I think people overestimated it and his long speed was better. And these numbers fully support that. It's still a very good explosiveness, but the long speed ended up being more of the factor than how these other players ended up being able to tail off. Denied Dennis Sutton, once again, in this same group as David Bailey and TJ Parker. Phenomenal performance there for a player that we've known is a great athlete. Romello Height, once again, not and R. Mason Thomas. It's a good enough group here. Again, Nadame Tucker, Max Llewellyn, you're starting to get further and further away, but still really solid short range quickness. We're getting a good group here. And yeah, Marvin Jones, Vincent Anthony, George Gums, Wesley Williams. Okay, I thought Wesley was better in the 10-yard split. I guess not. Very underwhelming if you're like 165 and below, in my opinion. And once again, Quintavious Hutchins, he just straight up UDFA. I don't think that he's going to get remotely looked at. 230 pounds and is not even a good athlete is just embarrassing. But vertical wise, Gums at least ended up getting a 41 on the vert, which is great. Again, not a fan of maybe the 10-yard split as much, but like overall, for someone who's going to be a day 3 player, it's showing at least some foundational traits. Malachi Lawrence, the 40-inch vertical, phenomenal. Mason Reiger as well. So that's showing up also with that 161 on the 10-yard split. Then you have Denied Dennis Sutton with a 39.5. Romello Height at least had some explosiveness there. So can't have the long speed, even though, he's not big enough to play anyways. But we'll see with the bench press whether maybe Romello put on some actual muscle. Trey Moore, again, really good testing numbers there. Quintavious Hutchins finally did something that's not despicable, 37-inch on the vert. Same thing with Nigel Leak. Wesley, 35.5. I mean, again, like the explosiveness is not bad. David Bailey had 35. People want to fault him for it, but I'm not really worried about it. Like that's a good number. Like 35 is what you're kind of hoping for. If it's below that, you start getting worried, but again, he tested out overall really well. Keldrick Falk ended up testing in this, in the jumps as well as the on-field drills. I thought he looked pretty solid. I mean, the first time he was doing, like his agility definitely did not check out, but he was wearing a leg sleeve. I don't know if that's for a reason or not. We'll see, but 35-inch vertical for someone with 34.5-inch arms is phenomenal. TJ Parker, 34 inches. So again, just about at that spot where you start getting uncomfortable, but still solid enough. Then, of course, Jayshawn Barham, again, I wanted him to be a bit better of an athlete for someone who is kind of a linebacker converted edge rusher. Cassius Howell, the 32.5 is just not good enough, though. I mean, he's tied worse with Vincent Anthony and Max Llewellyn. And again, for someone of his size, I'm glad that he had a good 10-yard split, but it is something to at least wonder. It's like the explosiveness drills, like he ended up, spoiler alert, doing bad on 2 out of 3. So, edge-wise, Denied Dennis Sutton had a 10-11, as well as Malachi Lawrence with a 10-10. I think those two were in the top 8 in the past 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember if that's correct. So, fantastic explosiveness there in terms of the broad jump from them. David Bailey right on their heels with a 10-9 and a pretty big drop-off before you end up getting to that next group. But Mason Reiger, again, showing up at the top of the numbers, just not having the top speed. So, there's enough reason to get happy about that. At least Vincent Anthony and Jayshawn Barham ended up having that range. Seeing TJ Parker above the 10 made me feel a lot better. Keldrick Falk at a 9.9. Honestly, not the worst thing in the world when you end up looking at him compared to Cassius Howell with a 9.7. It just doesn't make any sense. It should not have tested, in my opinion. I don't think he should have shown up. Should have just said, like, he has the flu or some shit. 3-cone wise, we had 2 players do it. Deny ended up getting the sub 7, which is very good to see. But again, a fantastic performance, and then 7 flat there for George Gums. 20-yard shuttle, we only had 1 with Trey Moore. So we are kind of seeing we're seeing the beginning of the end for maybe the shuttle, so to speak. But we also do have linebackers to go through, and Sonny Styles had a 4.46. Again, we talked about Arvell Reese earlier. But Sonny Styles put on a hell of a performance, the best performance, and he probably put himself into the top 5, if not maybe the top 4. Caleb Elam's-Orr did a ridiculous job today, 4.47. I know that he can end up tracking in straight lines with a lot of players, but He showed the explosiveness today too that we'll go over. Fantastic performance. Anthony Hill had a pretty, I think he had a 4.6 on the first run. I was like, this dude 100% should be in 4.5s and ended up going 4.51 official. So it's a little bit more like it. Great athlete there. I still think that the consistency needs to come a long way. Kyle Lewis, 4.53, was hoping for it to be in the 4.4s for someone who's kind of looked at as a nickel. He was 6 foot, 220, so I was hoping for him also to be 225, 230. Ends up coming in at a solid 220. Nami Obiazor, I honestly don't know who he is, but he had a solid testing day all around. Same with Carson Sharar at a 4.56. Justin Jefferson, for a coverage linebacker, I mean, sub 4.6 is perfectly reasonable. So I'm perfectly happy with it. I just would have hoped maybe it would have been close to the top of the class, but on its own, if you get sub 4.6, I'm happy. Jack Kelly getting sub 4.6 is incredible, though. He is somebody that definitely did not expect for him to get to that level. He's super high IQ, but Jacob Rodriguez is a massive winner. A lot of us doubted that top speed, and it looks like he's trained over the offseason to get more and more athletic. So ridiculous to see him do that. Jay Golday, a bit of a disappointment. He is someone who builds up speed very well in a straight line. So his big issue was coverage. That's not something that this event tests, but still the low 4.6s, not bad. Again, you guys start taking it in context of overall. I would hope for it to have been in the 4.5s, but it is not. Owen Heineke is a disappointment, though. He is in the 227-pound range, and he's getting 4.6s. And spoiler, he did not do well in the jumping either. And Xavier Sori got up to 228 from 220 and ended up once again losing his speed. So it looked like he was trying to make a claim that he's NFL weight and just did not show NFL athleticism. So once again, very clear that he did it for that reason. 10-yard split still matters, especially when you're on that second level needing to make quick adjustments. So Namdi ended up tying Sonny Styles for the best 10-yard split at 1.56. Anthony Hill right behind with Kyle Lewis at 1.58. Elam Zor still doing a great job at a sub 1.6 with 1.59. Same thing with Carson Sharar. At 1.6, at least Jay Golday showed the explosiveness in short range with Justin Jefferson and Jacob Rodriguez. Jack Kelly right behind him at 1.61. Then you have Owen Heineke at 1.62, and then Xavier Sori, who cannot get off the line, with a 1.66. Very disappointing to see that with him. Because again, remember, a lot of defensive interiors were getting in that same range. Vertical wise, Sonny Styles, the story, 43.5 inches, incredible. Just a freak athlete. I think it was might be top 4 in the past 8 years. We'll end up looking at that fact, but ridiculous amount of athleticism. Caleb Elam's Orr, he's somebody who I've had in the top of my list for stock reports several times. He was a superstar of the week, and he got a 40-inch vert, 4.47 40. Dude's absolutely cooking. Big fan of how Elam's Orr tested out today. Sharar also got that 40. Again, I have not studied him, but Lewis getting a 39.5 is especially needed. So it might not be the guy who can end up keeping with someone who's 4.3 down the field. But in short range, he did seem to have the explosiveness that you'd be looking for. Same thing, Jake Golday tested out well in terms of the split, and then also did well with the 39-inch vert. Justin Jefferson is very solid vertical vertical as well. Jacob Rodriguez, I already like the explosiveness, but he ends up proving it with the 38.5. Keyshawn Elliott ended up testing out with a 38, which is a lot more explosiveness than he showed on tape. Once again, the tape is just not that good. Xavier Story, I'm glad that he could end up doing a 37.5 on vert. I was hoping a little bit more from Anthony Hill. 37 is still very, very good, but again, for someone who ended up testing out in straight line stuff as well as he did, you'd be expecting 38, 39 based on comparative with the group. Kelly getting 37, again, tested out way better than expected. Obiazor 37. So you ended up seeing Jimmy Rolder test out during this drill, and that's it. I haven't really seen anything to give me any reason to care. But Heineke getting 34.5. I would have, again, loved for my linebackers to have above 35. And big hit to somebody who I thought was actually pretty damn solid. Broad jump wise, Sonny Styles 11.2, ridiculous. I mean, literally, look at the difference right there. So it's 5 inches more than the second best, which Lewis ended up doing a phenomenal job. Was 4 inches more than the next player here, Keyshawn Elliott, who again did well in the explosiveness. Same thing with Jay Golday, Anthony Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jack Kelly, Elam's Orr. You will just loop them all in. All showing exceptional short range explosiveness. You got Sherrard and then Rodriguez right behind. Again, 10-1 is still solid for me. I would like to be 10 and over. Story at least ended up having that. But once again, Heineke disappointing there. So let's look at the 3-cone and then the short shuttle. So Rodriguez ended up leading the 3-cone, which is incredible, seeing that flexibility, that fluidity. Same thing with Kyle Lewis under the 7-second mark, which is, again, good to see. But you do end up seeing the guys over 7. Gold Day, change of direction, not his biggest thing. Sonny Styles, he is a bit taller. It's going to be a lot tougher than maybe some of the shorter guys. Same thing with Jack Kelly. But, we did end up seeing Teran York test out with it. Man, for being under 6 foot, getting a 7.32 on it is just, there's a certain point where you just don't test. 20-yard shuttle-wise, again, leading the list. We got Kelly and Jacob Rodriguez. Kyle Lewis not too far behind, but he's also tied with Sonny Styles. And then a little bit of a gap. We got Jake Golday there. Elam's Orr. I'm not like the big, Elam's Orr is a straight line type of guy. But once again, bottom of the pack, Teran York, just getting to the point of being a UDFA. Sorry, I get excited about players who end up doing some good stuff in college, but the NFL doesn't give a crap what you're doing there. So that's going to be the video. We went through every single performance today. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the stream today or got to enjoy it after, feel free to let the people know down below. Love you. See you later. Peace.